It was September 9th, 1987, and the year of the harmonic convergence, which to me at the time meant nothing. I had spent the last year in deep depression, and I had been thinking of suicide for weeks. But an altercation with my oldest son, where I just lost it, hitting him and kicking him and him, folding up in a fetal position while I pummeled him. It caused so much shame that I got in my car and drove. I found myself on the shores of the Cascade Lake in a secluded place. I knelt, and I demanded of God for help. I could not keep doing this. I was not the mother I wanted to be. And a voice answered me back, just like that, and told me I would have someone today. So with my heart lifted, I drove back to Boise. In my state, I thought the voice meant a man, a partner, a love of my life. Well, that wasn't quite it. On the way back to Boise, I decided to stop by a friend's house, Sam Wilson. I'd known Sam for some time, and recently he'd had open heart surgery, and Sam had died. And Father God I Am told Sam that he'd been John the Baptist and the prophet Elijah, and he had a mission for him. He was sending him back to earth. Sam was still in a state of shock, but he had started receiving messages from both Father I Am and Jesus, and Sam called his messages the Word of Now. It was that day at Sam's that I met a healer of the light, and Carmen took me under her wing, and we started the healing process of getting all the gunk off of me. It was with her that my first guide, Nefertiti, appeared, and then the second appeared, the young King David. Within weeks of starting my healing process, I was doing my own channeling, and by the end of October, my guides told me that Carmen had taken me as far as she could. By January, I started my own meditation group and channeling group, and I got another guide, Moroni. In their many messages, they had taught me about the living earth. Moroni in particular was always giving messages about the earth, so much so I had started doing earth healing ceremonies with Sam's group. In my way, I was doing my little part to do this. It was through Sam that I met Frank and Zamaya Jordan, a master healer team. Frank was a master dowser and had originated a healing process he called Clearing the Way. What I learned with Frank would eventually be my own original classes that Jesus called spiritual alignment, and I would find dowsing very important to earth healing. The next year, I met Keneseta, an Oneida elder who had been trained in ceremonial ways for the Seneca Cayuga of Oklahoma. It was love at first sight, and the next May we were married. He started an Indian group in Boise called NACOB, Native American Coalition of Boise, and so I went along. This was my first taste of the culture and the worldview and the beliefs of Native peoples. I really enjoyed it and found that my guides, especially Moroni, was constantly showing me things. Keneseta and I moved to Oklahoma in 1993 and established the Indian Territory Culture Center and the Painted Horse Native Museum, which put me in the center of every activity. He would dream up something like a powwow, but I would do the work. So it was a huge learning experience and an immersion into his culture. Here we taught dancing, both Iroquois social and powwow, and had a youth drum group. We hosted an Elders' Day powwow, and we brought in schools to tell stories to and give them some Native American understanding. And sometimes the kids would come just to hang out. One time I was awakened in the middle of the night. I could hear drums beating faintly, and I wondered if I was having an out-of-body experience, but I poked my head out of the door, and the drums got louder. So I went to discover what was going on. Seems the powwow closed earlier than the kids would have liked, so they were down in our powwow grounds singing and dancing. His Seneca family adopted me and involved me in ceremonial dinners and the ceremonies, and Wyandotte Nation of Oklahoma made me Associate Artist of the Nation for the work that I did with Kennesaw. I literally soaked up, absorbed, osmosised everything I could. The loss of that community has been tragic for me in my extended life. But what I learned there was amazing. I saw Kennesaw talk to the fire. I saw him bless an eagle feather, which he had been asked to do. And he said he knew that feather had been dishonored by using it to cut cocaine. And he shook his head as he went out the door. When he came back, he said the flame just jumped out and consumed the entire feather. There was a sense of sadness and anger in him. The sadness was that the eagle had been dishonored, and the anger was because it was an Indian, someone who should have known better, who had done it. And the result was the result. Indian medicine is not forgiving. I saw him clear houses, and once when the entity in the house blew out his fire, he had to go home and get more medicine, a different mixture, and return to clear that house. And of course Kennesaw was always telling me tales of the past, events and what had happened, how a man came to Greencorn and made fun of the Iroquois' guardian spirit Hadui, or Crooked Nose, and the next year he had a face just like Hadui. He showed me the right way to smudge someone, and complained that locals were using briquettes which gave off toxic fumes as a sacred fire. I learned as much from him complaining about the loss of the culture, what it was compared to what it was now, as I did from the association of the medicine family I was adopted into. Kennesaw taught me to clean eagles, and then later said, you didn't get sick. Don't know what that meant for sure, but he'd given it to me to do. He was always teaching me something, and once I learned it, he had me do it instead of him. It was great training. During this time, my spirit guides, both human and animal, had grown. I was getting messages from Mama Earth and from White Buffalo Calf Woman, and I had quit asking who was coming in. By this time, I had realized the message was what was important, not who brought it. I taught my spiritual alignment classes and had a meditation group in Joplin, Missouri, and occasionally made trips to Springfield for special groups. In 2003, I was in Idaho, and I saw where this guy from Wind River was trying to get the Forest Service to let the Shoshone people into their sacred grounds to do prayers for Yellowstone caldera, as there was a valley shut down to tourists because of 200-degree heat and a 100-foot swell in a lake. But the Forest Department would not let them in to do their prayers, and they were trying to gain public support to force the Forestry Department. Well, they never got permission, and so this guy used a proxy place and settled the caldera instantly, for at least a while. This is the 19+1 medicine wheel he had used to quiet the Yellowstone caldera. He'd had to visit each one of these places and do ceremony on them in order to connect them to the central part in the Tetons. It was 2005 when I was called to California to the gathering of the Peacemakers sponsored by Robert and Julia Roskin. I had met them the previous year in Syracuse, New York, when David Yarrow had invited me to be part of the Onondaga Lake Healing and Peace Festival. The Roskins were there, and at that time Robert had asked to use my painting of Leon Shenandoah on the cover of his book, The Beauty Path. Later, he used photos from that event in his other book, A Guide for an Awakening Planet. I had just finished my art setup when this Indian came over and introduced himself as Blue Thunder and said, "You are the one I was sent here to meet. Come with me." I followed him to the parking lot, and he opened the car trunk, and for the next hour I was spellbound as he lifted out his loose leaf binder and leafed through it. He went into teaching mode. When I left him, my head was swimming from the download. He had just quantum leaped what my guides had been teaching me, and I knew he was right. This was the man who had put out the call for the healing of the Yellowstone. Never had I expected to actually meet him, let alone become good friends, and he my mentor. Blue would come to Boise and help train us in ceremonies. I had a small group of earth healers, among them a pipe carrier, Dawn Marie. On one of Blue's first trips, we planned a ceremony at Celebration Park. Blue and I and my white house wolf, Dagny, went there to find the place to have the ceremony. Celebration Park is along the Snake River, mostly sagebrush and volcanic rock. The Boy Scouts had made this park a project. It is a sacred place, now a tourist attraction, but at least it is being protected. There are many huge boulders with petroglyphs on them. I knew that Blue had studied these as part of his journey. I took Blue to the place where I knew 3 boulders together were covered in symbols. He stood there for a moment and looked around. It was almost like he was hearing something, and I had no doubt that the place was filled with ancient spirits. He said, "This is not the place for the ceremony." And he paused, and then he said, "The white wolf will lead you." My initial reaction was, "What?" Over the years, Dagny had proved his exceptionalism. One time in California, I attended an Arixa ceremony. I had tried to keep him out of the ceremony, but he shoved through the door and people that were standing in the doorway and laid down in the corner. During the ceremony, the facilitator called for a woman who needed healing, and she included me in the circle. We were all sitting around this woman, and the ceremony was progressing when we became aware that Dagny had joined us. He was standing directly in front of the woman, just inches away, and suddenly 3 sneezes. Then he walks into the surrounding circle and laid down until the ceremony was over, then back to his corner. I was speechless, but the facilitator was amazed. In that tradition, a healer sneezes the bad juju out of the individual. So I knew that Dagny had special understanding, but still. So I glanced at Dagny. As Blue told him the mission, "Go find where we are to have ceremony." Dagny transformed. His head went up. His ears stood out. His eyes became glowing yellow embers. Never had he looked more woofy. And off he trotted. Every so often he would look back to make sure that Blue and I were following him, which we did for some time. I was beginning to think we were just following the house wolf when Blue noticed that we were standing in a circle of stone elders, and inscribed on them were the symbols of the ceremony we were to do. Here was the vortex going up and down out of the center of the medicine wheel. I looked at Dagny, and he was off watering the sagebrush. Blue Thunder was Eastern Shoshone from Wind River Reservation, Fort Washakie, Wyoming. Formerly known as Blue Thunder, a.k.a. Benny LeBeau, his Christian name. He was a premier earth healer, peacemaker, and teacher, and his teachings can be found at earthwisdomfoundation.net. Partway through this training, he was giving a new name, Bavado Tatun Corazon, which translated to Rainbow Thunderheart. Over the next few years until his going home in 2016, I worked with Bavado, learning all that I could. I saw in his ceremonies the making of future communities who would keep the earth in balance and in harmony. As a youth, he had been encouraged by the Shoshone elders to study cultural anthropology and applied indigenous studies at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, Arizona. After college, Bavado was pulled by spirit to begin studying firsthand the ancient messages known as the original instructions, engraved on large stones around the country. For several years he traveled around the nation, locating the stones, some of which were half buried at long-forgotten sacred sites. He meditated intensively on the petroglyphs, opening himself to the stone messages and the knowledge of the ancient elders who carved them. Bavado's interpretation of these sacred sites and the petroglyph texts is sublime and multidimensional. His messages, learned from both Dreamtime and the many sharings of elders of the Shoshone and other indigenous nations. Through the medicine wheel and other ceremonies, Bavado was bringing critical public awareness to this rock art sites as the original Garden of Edens, places of tremendous power and harmony that strengthened and positively influenced the surrounding countryside and all creatures within it. Bavado is also well known for creating large medicine wheels and other circle ceremonies that accomplish major healing of Mother Earth's various environments, including the sacred sites, and repairing the Earth's power centers and energy grids, which have been disrupted by various forms of development. Bavado helps to educate indigenous nations and other cultures on the significance of sacred sites, their teachings, and the indigenous prophecies about the coming transition from the lower world vibrations into the higher dimensional fifth world of existence, long predicated by the Hopi, the Mayan, and almost all other cultures around the globe. The sacred sites are rapidly disappearing around the world due to uncontrolled land development and not understanding the way energy works with the earth. In a way, this is Native American feng shui. It is important that these sites be preserved and their wisdom retaught to other nations and cultures of the world. Today we can share his knowledge and understanding of what needs to change in our world in order to come into alignment with nature's laws. The intent of Bavado's work was to show that only by living in harmony with natural law can Mother Earth stay balanced and healthy, and her ley lines in tune, providing not only the land but us and all creatures on the earth the electrical energy to support our life force. Perhaps by making this information available to all people of all nations, we can come together to reharmonize the key lines with sacred tones and vibrations, holding ceremony with awareness and intent that the environment can be healed and our own hearts and lives made whole. There is a great need to undertake a thoughtful visionary engagement of all sacred sites as part of a general spiritual reawakening that must happen within all peoples, not just for ourselves, but to reestablish our relationship with our Mother Earth. We must work to bring ourselves back into harmony with the universal life force so we can consciously bring back the rain, snow, and springs for all of creation in purity. Our true Mother, the Earth, gives us life along with our Father within the central sun, working as one as the Creator. The universe is creation itself, known as the Great Mystery, one to everyone across the planet. The instructions on how to actualize this is a living truth, lies at the sacred sites, telling us how to stay in balance and in harmony with nature and all conscious life upon our sacred mother. In 2007, I was called by a clan mother mountain, Crystal Mountain, to do a medicine wheel ceremony. It would cover 130 miles around her. At the present time, Crystal was being used for decorative stone in the local subdivisions around people's homes. They were dynamiting her, and the force of the blast had shaken her loose from the foundation down in the earth called a crystal grid. She was disconnected from all of her other mountains. She was unable to send life force or receive communication. In the olden days, a long, long time ago, she'd been a Vision Quest mountain. Many of the local tribes had come there to do their vision quests, so she missed very much the drums of the people, the prayers of the people, and their voices. So when I arrived with my little group, she was eager to talk to everyone and have company. She spoke to everyone in our group that accompanied me that day. She told me that the first mountain of 6 was directly north, and when I got home, my pipe carrier, Dawn Marie, and I plotted the course due north 130 miles. And lo and behold, there was a mountain. In fact, 2. Grandfather and grandmother. But on the other side of these 2 mountains stood another place on that map, and it really drew me forward and attracted me. Hobo Botanical Gardens. When I visited the mountain, I found that Grandfather and Grandmother Mountains were hiking mountains. You had to park on the near bluff and then walk all the way over there, carrying all the ceremonial stuff. That just wasn't going to work. But Hobo Botanical Gardens was a drive right up, sit in the parking lot, throw up your camping gear, and it would catch all the energy to both the other mountains. This would become my favorite ceremonial place. It was filled with lady ferns and fairies and protected by an ancient Lemurian council, Lady Leila and her council. It was ancient growth, never having known man's saw. And then Dawn Marie and I plotted where all the other mountains should be. In 2008, I visited each location to find if there was a mountain there, and there always was. And I had visited with each native nation with appropriate protocols to tell them that the mountain had put out a call for healing, and I would like their help and permission. Well, permission was not granted, but I did have 2 individuals from those nations who would become part of our healing group. There were many, so many stories of synchronicity and connection with finding the mountains and the helpers that sometime I would like to share that. But for now, by the end of summer, I had found all of my mountains and done an introductory dedication for the healings. Over the next 4 years, I would be guided as to what to do. My pipe carrier, Dawn Marie, was very instrumental in this, as we would sit with her pipe and the pipe would tell us what to do. The first year was a clearing, the second year was the healing, the third year was the structure, and the fourth year was the activation of the new grid system we had been constructing. And the fifth year had the streams overflowing, and 50 head of elk had returned to the meadow to calve. And there were baby elks running everywhere. When I had started this journey, I had asked the mountain, "How will I know if this works?" And the mountain replied, "When the animals return." Bavado had invited me to be a presenter with him. He knew the stories I carried from the Haudenosaunee were very important, as their stories lay out the truth of what Blue was teaching. Their creation stories taught the truth of how the earth was formed and what it would take in order to heal it. 3 of these stories are presented in my video, Sacred Breath. He gave me some exquisite opportunities. Watching him make vortexes inside buildings, the medicine wheel he made in Patricia Robles' convention in the Tetons exuded so much love, we were told that it was the most loving convention she had held. But it was another opportunity for me to absorb Bavado's knowledge, which always was filled with love, peace, and amazing teachings. Bavado had gotten sick in his travels and had made it back to health, but it came back and he got very sick, and for whatever reason he was called home to be with the elders. This happened in 2016. I had spent some time with him in May, and at that time he gave me a new name, White Lynx. I had accepted a tour for the summer in Mount Shasta in the Medford-Ashland area to show my art, tell the stories and teachings. On one occasion, I was in Mount Shasta telling stories, but they learned of my association with Bavado and asked for a session on earth healing, and so I prepared the class, and it was the one time the room was filled to overflowing. I preferred to teach with PowerPoint, as a picture is worth 1,000 words, but not having one prepared, I had to just wing it. Everyone sat spellbound. Near the end of the presentation, as it was closing out, I noticed that something fell in front of me from the ceiling. I stopped and asked, "What is that?" The group replied that they had been seeing them drop throughout the presentation. I bent to pick it up. It was a blue flower petal. Later I would gather 15 in all, a miracle and a message from Bavado. This wisdom can heal droughts, calm earthquakes, calm tornadoes, and forest fires, and many other issues within the environment. It helps co-create the transformations using vibrant energy forces fields to clear the dysfunctional energies that have affected the environment worldwide. We are working side by side with Mother Nature, providing education and solutions to re-educate humanity about Mother Nature's principles of peace. Stone knowledge and wisdom shared in the rock alignments is part of the traditional knowledge of the Shoshone nations. This is the wisdom shared from the stars, representing the universal laws of the Star Nation cultures, who we are all related to. This wisdom has always been shared within our Red Nation cultures, within the Shoshone-speaking nations, and nations around all the planet. The wisdom was created thousands of years ago, as it would be needed at this time to help represent the principles of peace, for peace to be understood, for a peaceful environment, and for peaceful cultures of humanity. On this planet, the First Nations in America will unite in healing the environment with our ceremonies. We work with the ancient stone circle rock alignment and texts known as petroglyphs and rock art, wisdom, and knowledge. We can activate the womb springs of flow, and this then fills the dry riverbeds, rebirthing the waters, filling up the dry riverbeds with water as the rains activate and the snows return to the high mountains. These texts, written in stone, bring about the teachings of how to utilize this power of the medicine wheel ceremony worldwide. Ancient texts were written to restore the water and help other elements return to their original function by vibrations to operate in beauty. This wisdom, written on stone tablets or petroglyphs, teaches us what the purpose of the sacred sites are: giving life to all of creation. Knowledge written on cliff walls, boulders, caves, and on the ground is found in many areas worldwide. It shows how they help restore nature's electromagnetic force fields, known as circle of lights, at sacred sites that provide life to the earth's elements. All of creation is heart. At the stone aligns with the universe, stars, and cosmos to create the environment's elements. We are dedicated to returning cleanliness and health to the earth's soul, wind oxygen, waters, and the life force of all creation through vibrational healing and the sharing of ancient ceremonies and wisdom. We work with the elders of many tribes and nations, each culture sharing their prophecies of Mother Earth, interpreting their understanding of sacred geometry, grid lines, ley lines, song lines, bringing this wisdom into common understanding and application. We are reintroducing the sacred geometric science of the web of life, Grandmother Spider's web, the flower of life, and how it works upon Mother Earth's sacred sites in today's society. Our sacred prayer and hope is that as we reconnect to Mother Earth, we heal our families and relationships around the world for a better future for all generations to come, for we are all connected within the web of life. Together we can bring about the healthy planet, promoting peace. Our intentions and decrees in our spoken word represent our prayers from our hearts, giving love and thankfulness for all that has been created, honoring and truly loving Mother Earth and each other. Our hopes and dreams and intentions are in our decrees, known as prayers, for all of us to reconnect to Mother Earth for the betterment of. We are calling upon all nations, cultures, and traditions to join together to heal and calm today's epic droughts, earthquakes, fires, floods, and high winds. Scientific evidence shows how ancient ceremonies heal the elements within Mother Nature. We can explain the hows, the whys, the whats, and the causes behind today's dysfunctional weather patterns in California, Oregon, Washington, in fact, worldwide. We are gathering individuals from all walks, faiths, businesses, and organizations to join in this group effort, calling to sound healers to help heal the web of life within the sacred geometry of nature. We are calling to all nations to share the songs of their cultures, to join us in singing, dancing, and drumming. We invite everyone to work together peacefully through the intentions and decrees known as prayers for Mother Nature. Together we will bless nature's moisture and heal the environments the best that we can. Now is the time to re-educate all cultures of the world in the universal laws, nature's laws, that will harmonize the web of life, that we may all live together on our beautiful Mother Earth in partnership and in peace.